Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we are live, and thank you for joining us here on My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the host with the most. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hall of Famer himself, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad, it is a beautiful day here on My World recording day. You altered the open a little bit, but my gosh, old tech guy like me, Conrad, I'm having my Wi-Fi issues, but we're going to power through, struggle through, but we've come to a new revelation here in the My World studios. We won't discuss that today, but Conrad, how you doing, pal? Man, oh man. I don't even know where to start. We got a lot of wrestling going on. Mexico City is
what are you doing tomorrow in Mexico, Jeff? Tell everybody who your opponent is and where we can watch.
Here we go. You and our producer extraordinaire, Mr. Silva, y'all playing these funny little games. I won't be headed south of the border. I will be watching for the comfort of my home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So I'm pretty excited to see Arena Mexico brought to the world via AEW Dynamite. So
Mercedes Moné is going to be in singles action for the CMLL Women's World Championship. We've also got MJF wrestling Mystico. Mark Briscoe is going to be wrestling Okada. We've got a 4 million pesos high flying four-way. Sounds like a lot of fun.
I love it.
Ricochet and Hologram and Leo Rush. Oh my. And a 12-man tag, a who's who, including some of our favorites here on the program, like Josh Alexander and FTR and Bandito and Brody King. I mean, this is going to be a loaded show, and real wrestling history is going to be made. You can stream it on Max or you can watch on TBS. It's AEW live from Arena Mexico tomorrow night. But what we should talk about before we get to our topic today is what happened last night on Monday Night Raw. We sort of freestyled this was coming, and now it feels like it's official. Goldberg is back in the WWE, and he's going to be challenging Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship on Saturday night's main event. This is obviously going to have a lot of mainstream appeal, a lot of chatter. Non-wrestling fans, lapsed wrestling fans, they're going to be talking about this. And of course, as you may recall, this is the Saturday night's main event that was programmed to be on the exact same day as AEW's Stadium Show, their very first Stadium Show here in America, All In. So All In is now an afternoon affair, but Goldberg is coming back to challenge for the world title in Atlanta on Saturday night's main event. I hate to say we told you so, Jeff, but we told you so. What do you think?
Well, Conrad, full disclosure, we've had a couple of text exchanges, but I have been knee deep in baseball for baseball business a lot. I'll just say that. And the ball game came on last night, and Cody, my man, was dialed into that. And for the first time in a long time, I can't even remember a Monday, a Wednesday, a Saturday, a Friday that Cody didn't have some kind of comment, whether I'm on the road or with him in the house, that he didn't have some type of wrestling comment. And he was dialed into the basketball game, and I was kind of peripherally, but I was dialed into work. I'll just say that. And so, Conrad, I don't have, shame on me, a ton of context other than I'd love to hear what Rikishi has to say about this. Do you know if Rikishi has had any comments or thoughts or maybe questions or ideas or concepts, if you will? But no, it's a strong statement how they've kind of lined this up, opposite globe life. But that's the wrestling business. That's the competitive business. It happens every day, all day. There's a new Chick-fil-A going in by my house, Conrad, and it is right by Raising Cane's and God, what's that other new chicken place? I've already forgot it, but yes,
Slim Chickens.
Slim Chickens. There's three within 300, 400, 400, 400 or 500 yards of each other. There's three right beside each other. So competition happens every day in business, but it sure is interesting that they pull Goldberg out for this one. Very interesting.
Allegedly, you know, according to the rumor and innuendo, we've heard that he's going to have his last match and it's going to be down south. A lot of people believe that's where this is leading. this could be Goldberg's last match. What do you think about, if that really is the end, Goldberg perhaps having his last match in Atlanta? I mean, that's pretty poetic, is it not?
Well, you just kind of think of the history of Bill walking into a gym. What was it? Main Event Fitness owners, Sting and Lex, and kind of the 90s, if you will, especially the early 90s, Lex and Sting, before Lex went off to the WWF at the time. He walks in and right off the football field, and just kind of that entire power plant debut, the streak got going, the Atlanta Dome, he beats Hulk Hogan, a meteoric rise, and I'm not sure anybody has really ascended the ranks as fast as anybody. And the timing, and you had Austin on one channel, and I'm not saying they were identical characters by any stretch, but there were some similarities, and just kind of the timing. And then boom, that went away. And in the early days of WWE, Goldberg's running WWE, I guess you could say weren't as successful. But man, here we are. Gosh, what is this? 7 years later. And he's putting a exclamation point on his career in Atlanta on Saturday night's main event. That's a pretty cool personal thing for Bill, no doubt.
It is interesting you bring that up, because I saw something online and I wish I remember who it was. I'd love to give them credit. So if I think of that, I'll be sure, or I see it, I'll be sure to send it. Lord, there's a crazy storm going on outside.
Buddy, hey, Conrad, crazy. What is going on with our weather? We're kind of in the same.
I mean, it's wild right now, Jeff. Like, my trees are at an angle outside.
I got to pull up your radar, because last night we had one. There was stuff all over the yard.
Jeff, I want to ask you about Goldberg. The thing I saw that wanted to jog your memory about, or just a little thought starter for you. Someone said Goldberg, quote unquote, still eating off of 1998 in 2025 would be akin to superstar Billy Graham showing up in the year 2000 and demanding a title shot. And that really put a frame of reference like, wow, has it really been that long? But I think that's pretty close. Like, now obviously there's no comparing, superstar Billy Graham was a megastar, no doubt about it. But as far as being a global phenomenon, that was really before cable TV became what it was. So there's no real comparison between the two. But timeline wise, I do think it's interesting that Goldberg still carries so much name recognition and name value and bandwidth with him, that, like, I know my dad will see this and say, hey, is Goldberg coming back? Like, it will cross over enough to mainstream. I mean, that's high fives all around, effective use of Goldberg. And if you were booking that, what would you do, Jeff?
Let me ask you, Conrad, because again, I was, it's a rarity for me to not catch any of our wrestling programming, even online. And I woke up this morning dealing with, I won't call it issues, but kind of, yes, dealing with it. So you talked to me this morning before I went to the gym. I just hadn't done a lot. What actually happened last night? Just the Cliff Notes version. He showed up and challenged for the title.
Gunther did a promo, and now they're main eventing Saturday night's main event, July 12th in Atlanta. Looking forward to seeing what happens there, but we've got a big go ahead.
Anyway, so you said what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, if you have any, I know you didn't see it, but I mean, you got any thoughts, anything at all you can give me about Goldberg in WWE in 2025?
Well, I don't think it's going to be his last match in Atlanta, unless I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
You think they put the title on Goldberg?
No, I don't.
Where do you think the last match will be? Saudi Arabia?
No. Just because they're doing a Cena last match in December, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, Conrad. I'm not thinking it's this last. I'm not thinking it's this calendar year. I may be way off, but no, I think he's coming back for a run, if you will. man, when you just put it in that context with putting Big Larry in there, timing, as we've said so many times in this business, Bill entered at the right time with the right streak, with the right company. Like WCW, he would have never had that kind of run of undefeated streak at somewhere else. And Hogan was at the right position and felt with the ticket sales, just timing, really lined up for him. And he's still, in a lot of ways, that's getting over during that time frame, still paying big dividends for him.
Hey, I do want to ask you, you mentioned him earlier. You said, I wonder what Rikishi thinks. I know you were probably asking sort of tongue in cheek, but
It's complete.
I do have to ask, do you think, I mean, clearly you have an opinion about Rikishi sharing his thoughts about his son's position in WWE. And I think you're uniquely qualified to talk about this because once upon a time, and obviously it's a different time, it's a different era, but your dad used to have pretty candid conversations with Wade Keller of the Pro Wrestling Torch. And I recognize that was a newsletter and a hotline business. And this is very much consumer forward facing content created by Rikishi. So it is a little different, but still it's the father of a talent who's on TV sharing his opinion. You lived through some of that. Do you feel comfortable? Will you share your opinion about what Rikishi, him sharing his thoughts about Jay's career?
I mean, look, to dial it into kind of pop culture, if you will, look at Halliburton's dad right now. He walked on the court. I don't know if you know that story, Conrad, but he walked on the court, gotten in arguably he's top 5 player in the league. Giannis.
Yep.
And you know, that all went down and they kind of barred him from the building and it made a lot of news and they brought it, you know, he was allowed back and all that kind of stuff. But I get it. Father-son relationships, the passion, the love. Rikishi legitimately is speaking from a position of authority. He knows stuff, Conrad, that me and you don't know. He knows stuff without question across the board. There's more to this than meets the eye. There's no doubt. But I'm speaking from my experience that no matter what a father says, there is zero upside for the son. And he's not doing it maliciously. He's taking up for his kid. He's doing it out of love, all the way down. And it's all coming from 100% place, I believe. I know Rikishi, travel with the Rhodes with him, a complete place of love. But I don't see the upside. I don't believe there's any upside for Jay. I just don't think it can be strewed any other way. Again, he's dealing from a set of cards that I'm not, or you're not, or really the whole world isn't. But yeah, that's my 2 cents worth.
By the way, almost everyone who has a famous wrestling dad feels the exact same way Jeff just laid out. We'll have to see how it goes. I do wonder what's next for Jey Uso. I'm excited to see where his career is in 6 months. I mean, are we still trying the singles thing? Are we still trying the tag thing? He's got plenty of options. And by the way, since we're talking about WWE, I should mention today's episode is brought to you by Cash App. You've actually seen WWE have some Cash App sponsorship recently too. And if you don't already have Cash App, like what the hell is waiting for you? Like this is the absolute easiest and maybe most fun and perhaps safest way to send money. Making moves with money, making old-fashioned money moves should be easy. That's why there's Cash App. It's fast, it's safe, it's honestly just way more personalized than all the other apps out there. There's no extra hoops to jump through. There's no extra stress. All the tools are right there. You saw Cash App as an official partner of WWE on their Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Well, I guess they've got some pretty hilarious ads coming up in WWE later this year. So stay tuned. Cash App is here to stay for wrestling fans. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They're looking out for you. If something seems sketchy or sus, as the kids are saying, maybe they're concerned you might accidentally be sending money to a potential scammer, they're going to warn you and make you think twice before you hit the send button. It's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. You can even spice up your payments with custom text and stamps and backgrounds. If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, what are you waiting for? Go download it now from your phone's app store. Sign up and enter the code MyWorld in your profile. Just send $5 to a friend, and you'll get $10 just for getting started. For a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download the Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code MyWorld in your profile and send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. That's right. Free money, y'all. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. I mean, I feel like I need to repeat that. Download the Cash App. Sign up today. Use the code MyWorld in your profile. Send $5 to a friend, and within 14 days, you get $10 dropped right into your account. Wow. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Hey, speaking of money, let's talk about where you guys were with the money 20 years ago. Our topic today is Slammiversary 2005.
We getting into a topic today, Connie? We're really getting into a topic. And
well, eventually.
Are we on YouTube Live right now, pal?
Yeah, bud. That's why we did our open, and we said we were doing 2:30. I know we advertised it at 2:30. Jeff,
all right, hell, I didn't know.
We're a little early, but we're here, by God, and we're glad to be here. And we've got some live questions here. Trigger Cheese has a question before we jump into Anniversary 05. He wants to know, by the time we talk Gail Kim, Travis Scott will be halfway down the entrance ramp. Love you, Jeff. Do you have working guitars or all shoot guitars? That is a good question. You've said before that once upon a time there was like a warehouse of Jeff Jarrett branded TNA guitars. Do you have a stockpile of real guitars or professional wink guitars around somewhere?
Trigger Cheese, shout out to you, my man. I appreciate it. I almost want to just sidebar on your opening comment. By the time we talk Gail Kim, Travis Scott will be halfway. That is poetic. I can't let you guys in on all my secrets. They're all shoot guitars. What are you talking about? But no, we'll call it the ones for sale. Those are the real shoot guitars. The working guitars, they come in all shapes, forms, and fashions. Ask Beetlejuice. Ask Gary Coleman. Hey, did you know Gary Coleman's widow is going to be doing a lie detector show test and all that, Conrad? You heard about it? I'm all over the place today. My brain is rattled.
Are you all right? Do you want us to have Gary Coleman's widow hit you with a guitar for revenge at StarCast? Is that something you'd like?
Oh, now we're talking StarCast. Hey, have you heard about the Gary Coleman thing? The widow?
Guys, Slammiversary 2005 is our topic. Jeff told me before we started, guys, I got to get going. I have a hard out. Let's talk about everything but the topic. I don't know. Jeff's got to get on some damn kratom or something. Maybe not too much. I guess I heard it killed Sabu, but that can't be right.
Oh, Lord.
I do want to ask you a fun question. Our friend is here. Andrew Dice Clay, one of the most amazing follows on Twitter. He's had a theory for a while here, Jeff. I don't know if you've seen this, but
go ahead. Jonathan
Coachman does a podcast with Vince Russo, and they've done a lot of hypothetical chatter.
Okay.
About, hey, what's going to happen with Triple H? Is Triple H getting pushed out by TKO? I mean, we even saw last week, there was an interview that came out from Matt Riddle where he's just saying, oh, yeah, they're trying to push him out, blah, blah, blah.
No way.
Who knows what's real? I don't know if I believe any of that.
That ain't happening.
But that did create a hypothetical. Hey, what if Triple H wasn't in the big seat? Who would be in the big seat? And I saw Andrew Dice Clay say, well, the obvious answer is Jeff Jarrett. So he's here with us today, and he says this has nothing to do with anything and not related to anything that may or may not happen in the future. But does Jeff think he'd do a good job running WWE?
Oh, Conrad.
So let's just pretend for a minute that Triple H is no longer in that spot. I don't think Bruce would want that spot. I think he'd say, no, thanks. I don't think Brian would get dropped into that spot because I don't know, but I don't know that he wants to deal with talent and everything else that you got to do. So who slides into that spot? And I think, well, if Shawn Michaels is going to keep running NXT, you get along pretty well with Shawn. And well, if Bruce is sticking around, you get along pretty well with Bruce. And well, Road Dogg's up there and you get along pretty well with Road Dogg. So at first I thought, man, what a far-fetched idea Andrew Dice Clay had. And then the more I thought about it, the more I went, So what say you? He's with us here live. What do you think of this? How good of a job do you think you would do running WWE, Jeff?
Oh, Ian, nice man, you are the best. Conrad, I don't even know how to respond to that. I really don't.
The answer is great. You would do great.
Okay.
You would exceed all expectations. You would deliver a lot of shareholder value, and you would love to get your hands on WWE. That's the answer, right?
Conrad, I'll take it. I'll take it. It's in my blood, man. I won't go in a rabbit hole at all, but gaming and baseball and all the kind of different stuff. But many times after I get off a call, I'll get a side text. Man, wrestling is in your blood, isn't it? I'm like, yep, it sure is. So I'll leave it at that, Conrad. I'll let you guys discuss that. Ian and Ian sidebar on it, and y'all come up with the plan.
I mean, I think he's in. I think he's in. Let's do a little bit of conversation about 2005. Before we get going, I want to mention that the Observer had a big story about the television show Impact potentially being moved from Fox Sports Net to WGN. I guess there was a story around this same time that your dad had found some potential backers to buy TNA back from Panda Energy. And based on what you said during our last 2005 show, I feel like you have a lot to say about that topic. Does that whole WGN and perhaps your dad trying to get an investor group to buy back TNA, does that need to be its own separate show, or can we cover it in today's show, do you think?
You know what, Conrad? That's really a good question. That the potential investor, I was kind of essentially taking the lead on that. And then when I introduced the group to my dad, and then my dad really saw it was real, and we had those conversations. And because at that stage, and look, we're going back into the God, I remember the fairgrounds was really cold. So that meeting was, so we'll call it the winter of 05. And, so we're 2.5 years in to TNA, the investment, everything that goes with it. And, I get it. The Carters were getting to a point and asking all the right questions. And I'll just say this, it was a very revealing meeting when we found someone that was ready to step in. And I mean, completely step in, not sidebar, not contribute, take the lead from a financial perspective. And the door didn't just politely get shut on those folks. It got slammed. And I'm not going to say there was anything that was unprofessional, but it was under no uncertain terms that the Carters weren't interested on any level of taking themselves out of that seat. Obviously, in 2013, we found out the exact same deal. They weren't interested in that. But the WGN situation and where we were at as a company, Conrad, I'm not sure it's a full episode. Me and you can talk and ramble, but those conversations, and look, and I would have to really read the research to line up my timelines and just where WGN was in the marketplace, and the Cubs and the Bulls and their programming, and what WGN meant to the Chicago market and the national market. I don't know, Conrad, but those conversations began to get fruitful. And then, as we know, the Spike situation entered. So not sure it warrants an episode, but Conrad, it was a very, very, when the book, who knows, may or may not be written one day, or an autobiography, if you will, there is some really good kind of fun facts that in a lot of ways, hindsight's 2020, but had I really, maybe I should have listened better, just kind of where the Carters' take were on everything. But during that transition from a creative, from a marketing, from a finance, international, it was all, there was, pardon the pun, but there was a lot of turning points, if you will, that worked themselves out. So I don't know, Conrad, I'll defer to you on whether it's a episode or not, but the WGN talks and where they were headed, but they never had the opportunity to come fruition. It was a Spike deal.
So let me ask, when we're talking about WGN, was that going to be part of the plan with a new investor? Had you found that opportunity on your own, or
No, that was through. It wasn't the new investor. Didn't have anything to do with that. They had their ideas on how to and new capital, and because look,
who is they? You said they had their ideas. Are you talking about the new investor?
yes, my bad.
Are you allowed to? Is the new investor a name we know, or can we call them something for the purposes of our story if you don't want to reveal their identity for some reason?
It was basically they were in the banking and finance,
Okay.
but it's an individual, and maybe me and you can talk offline on how to kind of navigate that. But they were deep pockets, and they had an idea because you got to remember coming off Fox Sports, and WGN wasn't going to be. Yes, they're a super station, but they didn't have the rights fees. They weren't owned like a Spike by a big media conglomerate. They did their rights fees were Cubs and Bulls and all that. So it was going to be a different model to begin with. The advertising was going to be different. It was just kind of and we never got into a layer upon layer. We can talk about it, but we didn't really define what that look was like. Because you got to remember, WWE had a Saturday morning show on WGN at one time during this time frame, which kind of factored into all of it. Because, I'm sure Keller or Meltzer, all this would have ratings. I know WGN, for the most part, was happy with those ratings. I don't know if the WWE was happy with them.
So you've got two things going on here, a WGN opportunity and a new investor opportunity. Neither one truly shakes out. The WGN thing, is that something where you feel like there was in an alternate universe, it could have worked?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, yes. And look, that was where, and I understand it more today. I just think for me, my growth as a business person in your mid 30s and in your mid 50s, you just view the world differently.
Yes.
But in so many ways, had we not have, and I'm saying I'm going to say the Carters and the Jarretts, had we really not walked into that saying it's one or the other, my dad had grown to a frustration level, and obviously we know where that went in the next 12 months from this conversation. But he'd grown at frustrating level, and I think he was hopeful that it was going to be those Carter, Panda out, new folks in, not where that relationship got, but where is that at the time is he understood, okay, entertainment business is not for Panda. They are not. They're not fit for this, if you will. It turned a little bit sour as the months went along, but it wasn't quite as bitter at this point. This was a pretty good ball shot to my old man in that we worked and we got it, and we got folks to the table because it was our understanding that they were wanting some relief. Again, I'm going back to hindsight's 2020. Had we all kind of sat down and said, hey, how do we make this work for all parties involved? That would have been really interesting. That would have been really interesting because this finance company had arms and legs of a entertainment. They had connections in Vegas. They had, they were maybe a better fit for the entertainment business. So it's a what if, Conrad, but it never got there.
I can't wait for us to talk about that in long form some other time. Let's try to stay on track here and remind everybody, we're in 2005, and this is the year when, and I'm sure you saw this last week, Jeff, it was the 20-year anniversary of WWE/ECW One Night Stand. And it's still one of the most fun times I ever had at a live event. Easily the Sandman entrance is the greatest entrance I've ever witnessed live. Just,
oh, wow.
It was real closure for a hardcore ECW fan. It felt like a dream come true to be able to see it and feel it and experience it one last time. And around that same time is when Shane Douglas, with a friend of the show, Jeremy Borash, got together and they did Hardcore Homecoming. They did a whole documentary, sort of a non-WWE produced version of the rise and fall of ECW, which was gangbuster business on DVD for WWE. And that led to the creation of this one-off event that led to, hey, we're just going to relaunch the promotion ECW. Well, Shane Douglas was trying to run these nostalgia shows. He would first start, with Hardcore Homecoming the day before One Night Stand at the ECW Arena, and later he would do November to Remember, and then eventually Extreme Rising. And Meltzer was pretty matter of fact about all of this, and he drew some parallels to TNA. Here's what Meltzer said on The Observer way back when, here in 2005. The lesson of ECW on TNN is a cruel lesson regarding TNA, although TNA has the ownership that keeps the product alive through the tens of millions in losses. In the end, added exposure with a national primetime cable outlet didn't increase their paying audience, despite the logic that says so. There is not necessarily correlation between TV ratings and the ability to get those viewers to pay money for the product. McMahon did not kill ECW by stealing its TV. If ECW was profitable at the time, you could make that statement. ECW died because it had no money mark willing to lose millions, and it didn't have enough fans to support to make even a break-even proposition at its peak, and it was long past its peak. End of story. It's a bitter pill to swallow if you're a big ECW fan, but I can't argue that he's wrong. What do you make of this?
And shout out to Dave
Spotto. Meltzer?
No, okay. Spotto, the new podcast. That entire story. And again, Conrad, I was working so much during this time, and I'm talking about, let me back up. I was working during the ECW, we'll call it heyday, if you will. And I wasn't aware of all the ins and outs. I just knew the peripheral stories. I didn't know anything about pay or back pay or any of the salty stories that you hear come out of. I just wasn't aware of all that. Obviously, when the WWE did all that back, but the TNN story, just everything that went with it. And the understanding, and again, I always, in my mind, ECW was the hardcore stuff and then some fantastic, great wrestling matches. And that was kind of their brand. But I didn't know anything about their executive structure at all. And so when I hear something like that, obviously I wasn't dialed into it. I just take it all with kind of a grain of salt in that, the one thing that jumped off the page as you're reading that is Meltzer's tens of millions, like good old Dave. But I don't know what you're looking for there, Conrad, like what specific feedback you want, but I just take it all with a grain of salt.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is, he's proving or trying to prove that just because people watch your show doesn't mean you'll be able to convince them to buy your pay-per-view.
Yes.
And the idea is he's pointing out that, pay-per-views have seemingly peaked around 60,000 for the big Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe match. But then it dropped to around 8,000 buys in the more latter days of Impact on Spike TV. And I think that's a real head scratcher, because that's still very much, we're talking way back when now. That's very much the pay-per-view era. We're a couple of years away before Floyd Mayweather creates this Money Mayweather character and breaks all kinds of records with Oscar De La Hoya on Cinco de Mayo. But so we're still in the heyday of pay-per-view. Was that a real challenge for you? I mean, this is a company that was really born out of, hey, we're starting pay-per-views first.
Yep.
And I feel like you sort of reverse engineered it. I had a funny conversation years ago with David Flair, and he says, I did the business in reverse. I started on national TV and I wound up on the independents. And I feel like, ECW had TV, syndicated TV, but they felt like the Holy Grail was pay-per-view. Well, you guys start with pay-per-view and now pursue the national television deal as like the Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that you felt like, hey, in order to sell more pay-per-views, we've got to have TV. That is the logic that wrestling had used for years and years. But I think he's laying out here that, hey, it didn't really work out for ECW that way. And when you take a look at TNA, I think you could argue TNA suffered the similar fate. We'd have millions watching on TV and not millions buying
far from it. And I think it goes right into, look at where the business is at today. The streaming services, the word pay-per-view is step by step a little bit more away from it, a little bit more away from it. And look, AEW does pay-per-view better than anybody. And I can say that as strong and as proud as possible. But, you know, the term premium live event has entered into the wrestling vernacular space and continues to grow and grow and grow. Conrad, this podcast alone gave me so much more clarity than I had than before I started it, because it comes down to this. And look, I was leading the room or in the rooms when those conversations would come up. And I'll just say, in rough terms, Russo was pro, put it on TV, give them everything on TV, get the highest ratings you can possibly get. And that's going to increase the buy rates, because the more people that watch it, the more, I'll say, I don't know, maybe that's not the traditional line of thinking, but that was his line of thinking. And I'll call it, you know, kind of a Dutch Mantel mentality. I'm just using these two guys. But the other school of thought was, hey, man, use the TV kind of as your infomercial and make them pay to see the big matches. Well, I was in the middle always, literally and figuratively, in my mindset, in that, yeah, we serve two masters, and you just can't do that, because I wanted to make sure the ratings were as high as they possibly can. Yes, to get buy rates, but also we were always looking for the renewal, the what increase we're going to get. And in our case, you know, this podcast has afforded me the thought that the biggest, and I'll say the biggest, but Conrad, probably one of the biggest what ifs in TNA history is that when you look at 07, 08, 09, what if Hogan would have never come in? If he would have never come in, and we would have stayed the course, and the numbers would have continued to inch up and inch up like they were, would we have gone from 2 hours to 4 hours of programming, and our revenues, we'll call it, doubled, with not double an increase, just like our revenue, our contractually doubled when we went from 1 hour to 2 hour, and our expenses. So when you kind of look at it through that narrative and those lenses, you just look at, okay, our ratings, you know, when you look at, and I know it's the golden age of cable television, but when we're close to 2 million viewers every week, and our show, and this is another thing that I think we ebb and flow when we talk about it, but for the most part, our first segment and our 8th segment were the two highest rated. So people would tune in, and CSI was our lead in, and same thing, the big drop off and all that. But then as you kind of bottom of the hour, just the channel change, just the viewer habits. But, you know, we would build toward that fourth quarter hour, and they would come up, which meant our wrestling fan was engaged with our product. And we would think, okay, this buy rate, man, we're going to do this, or whatever our projection was, and it would fall short. And you just look at it. And again, I'm going to go back to, Conrad, the Apple Wallet generation. You know, we're doing our advertising on Cash App, but, you know, this generation, the whole world, not just this generation, it's so much easier to buy. And Conrad, what's one of your rules in sales?
Gotta be easy to buy from. It's number one rule.
Yeah, well, know, like, and trust is what's more important.
People buy from who they know, like, and trust, but I mean,
yeah,
you got to be easy to buy from.
And I'll say this: the pay-per-view industry, prior to the digital explosion, transactional pay-per-view, and this is before Fight. You know, we've gone into that history on Fight with Wrestle Kingdom and how that just kind of the tailwind that took off from that. But when you're looking at direct TV, Dish Network, and cable, buying pay-per-view, I think it was easier to steal it as opposed to buy it. I mean that. I truly believe there was all kinds of issues, and that was our audience. And you know, again, you're saying we started on pay-per-view. Okay, that gave us the opportunity to plant a flag, just to get in the ground, because no network was going to take wrestling coming off the Attitude Era. So how do we start a company? That was, I don't say our only option, but we felt that was our best option. It eventually paid off for us. Look at the results. But, you know, we started on pay-per-view. And so we started, as in the words of Conrad Thompson, maybe, we started in a format that was hard to buy from. That's challenging.
what I wanted to get to was, I mean, once you guys are up and running and you have TV and you see that your pay-per-views are not converting at the rate you hope, I mean, where would you say ratings peaked for TNA? How many millions of people were watching? Was it 2 million?
Yeah.
So if we have roughly 2 million people watching, and then, you know, we're only going to sell 60,000 pay-per-views once, it's going to go more like 8,000. Why do you think that converted at such a small percentage versus AEW in modern times converting at a much larger percentage?
I,
Because
I,
you see, you know, a less than a million people watching AEW, but 100,000 buys pretty routinely. I mean, often 150 or more. What is the difference in? Is it technology? Is it fandom? Is it presentation? Is it creative? How can you separate that?
I mean, I think it's hard to put your thumb on any one thing, but I think the biggest, not only it has technology made it much easier to buy from, I believe society, how do kids, you know, in those days, how did, and I don't say just kids, how did pop culture buy music? CDs. How did it, just the transactional mentality of society? You know, hell, you buy nowadays. I don't have to tell you, Amazon, Bezos changed the world. Steve Jobs changed the world with the phone. The no, like, and trust, and easy to buy from. That all of those factors that kind of get in there. I just think at the tip top of that, Conrad, is technology. I think when you look at today's numbers, and whether it's Triller TV, ppv.com, you know, all the different YouTube, all that, and then, you know, traditional cable and satellite. I don't want to say it's a throw in, but it kind of is. But if you still buy your purchases off traditional cable, if you will, for the few cold quarters out there, but buying a pay-per-view on traditional cable television or satellite is exponentially easier today than it was 20 years ago, even in that format. No, you disagree?
Could not possibly. I was trying to find a word to let you know how much I disagreed, and I couldn't find the word.
Okay.
I mean, I disagree with a capital D, but who knows why it really is. But it is interesting to think that that's your takeaway.
What's your disagreement on?
I think people expect things to be free now. I don't have to pay for WWE pay-per-views anymore. They're just included. But people are still reaching in their pocket and buying AEW pay-per-views at a rate that they never did for TNA or ECW or so many others. And I can't wrap my head around that unless it's just more global versus domestic. If that's it, I buy that. Because when we hear pay-per-view buys now, you know, if you remember way back when, 20 years ago, when, and I'm not saying this was the case for TNA numbers, but WWE, we would hear Meltzer say, oh, they did so-and-so domestic buys.
Yep.
And roughly so-and-so international. Now, I don't think everybody listening to this knows this, but I'm about to upset some North American pay-per-view consumers. The rest of the world gets those pay-per-views cheaper. This is the way StarCast was priced. It's the way pay-per-view works. It's just, you know, you can charge more for a pay-per-view here in North America, Jeff, than you can, you know, in the other territories around the world. So whereas a show here might be, you know, $30, $40, $50, whatever it is, it's usually a fraction of that internationally. So maybe that was a reason they would differentiate the buys. But what I was getting to is years ago, Meltzer would report, here's the domestic buys, here's the international. We don't really see that reporting anymore. Now it's just, here's how many buys. Mm-hmm. And to me, that feels like it's because we've combined the two. We're no longer so I think when we're talking about, oh, the TNA only got 8,000 buys. Okay, yeah, they did in the continental US, but we're not factoring in all the international. And I still believe that international pay-per-view is probably only, I'm guessing, 20, 25%, something like that for AEW. I know the lion's share is still going to come from North America, but I just find it interesting that Because I thought that's the answer you were going to go with. Oh, Connie, it was domestic product. Now it's a global product. But you went with, oh, it's easier to buy on cable. And it's like, I don't even know anybody who's buying on cable.
No, it was harder to buy back then.
I don't think it was. I mean, I hit a button on my remote and I got it.
Okay. All right. So that I was making sure that I was understanding what you were disagreeing with. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think the ability to purchase it on your phone or purchase all the, back then, if you didn't watch it on cable or satellite, you couldn't watch it. Do you think all the other options, where does that factor in?
Jeff's internet's pretty spotty. We're going to do our best to power through today, but he's going to get real American Tennessee internet next week. We promise. Jeff, I think it's more complicated to watch pay-per-view now than it was back then. I want to remind everybody, where were they watching the Impact television show? Was it not on cable TV?
Yep.
So could they not use that same remote that got them that program to then press the green button to buy the paper? Like it was so easy, and we didn't convert them. And that's the thing that I'm struggling with.
Well, you cannot discount at the very top of it. I don't say we didn't do a good job creatively because we were getting ratings, but we did not engage. So it's I'll call it creative / marketing, promoting, all the above. We didn't do enough good enough job to sell it. I mean, that I think that has to be number one, or I'm putting my head in the sand and kidding myself. And what was WWE doing? So let me ask you, what do you, let's land back on, because I think I'll call it creative and then hard to buy from, or not enough options, or it's a different generation. What do you think the number one reason was that we didn't convert more?
They didn't want to see it.
Yeah. Okay. So creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Then we are landing on the number one reason. Number two reason.
I don't think it was technology.
Okay.
I mean, I really do feel like it was, and I guess that's what Meltzer was kind of driving at, when he was sort of laying out that ECW couldn't survive this way. And by the way, he wasn't necessarily talking about TNA, but I wanted to draw the comparison to TNA. He was basically saying, hey, don't get too excited about Shane Douglas launching a reborn ECW here. They couldn't get enough support the first time. It's not going to change now.
Yeah.
And Andrew Dice Clay, still with us, says Meltzer's being very unfair. TNA was simply bigger in the UK, India, and Europe than ECW ever was. And ECW was on TNN during a wrestling boom period. TNA was up against it from the start. I tend to agree. Shout out to Andrew Dice Clay. Not everything has to be hard all the time, but if you'd like to be hard all the time, can we recommend Blue Chew Max? I got a text from Karen over the weekend, and she told me how good it was working. She just sent me a selfie. She was smiling ear to ear. And listen, I know that Blue Chew Max gave Jeff the hot tag he was looking for. It combines the active ingredients Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. It's got Jeff going for stroke after stroke. And guys, now you can try it. Get your first month of Blue Chew free. You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. Sign up at BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll get a prescription within a few days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all done online. And that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. You can actually try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld. Just pay the $5 shipping. The promo code is MyWorld. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. I know we're gonna move on because I do want to talk about AJ Styles, but I can't seem to think that it's all creative. There's something else at play that gets the AEW buy rates at a higher clip than the TNA or WWE or everybody else. I don't know exactly what that is, but it can't be creative because I see people being creative of AEW creative all the time.
Let me ask you,
critical of it. Go ahead.
because this has been, you have no idea how many conversations this has taken place. And I'm going back, even to this day, I'll have different conversations at conventions and this and that. Hey, I watched every one of your Asylum shows and never paid a penny for it. Or, so how much?
Well, let me give you a number. In the June of 05 pay-per-view was Vengeance. That's for WWE. You guys are going to do Slammiversary. And it had 420,000 worldwide buys, 260,000 domestic.
Oh, wow.
260,000 buys here in America for that WWE pay-per-view in June of 05.
160 international?
420 is the total between both. Yeah.
But 160 international is some strong ass numbers.
At $34.95.
Yeah, that is a healthy international. And again, we sold ours. It's funny, premium live event. We've called it our premium content. Impact was, anyway. Wow.
Your biggest premium star, of course, at the time, near the top, is AJ Styles. And it's written here in the Observer, AJ never really had the full option of going to WWE, even though his contract was set to expire in September. TNA had a 1-year option on his services after the contract expired and exercised it. And they signed him to a new 3-year deal, effectively keeping him away from WWE until either late 2008 or until the company is no more. Jerk. As noted, they weren't going to put the NWA title on him unless he signed the deal, but it wasn't a forced gun to your head signing under pressure. They'd verbally agreed to the deal and just hadn't worked out the minor points before the weekend. 3 years ago, Styles did turn down a WWE developmental offer when he was considered less experienced because the money, which was like $500 a week, wasn't worth it for him to give up his regular landscaping job and move his family to Louisville. It ended up working out better for him because he's made a far bigger name, and between TNA and the Indies can largely make his own schedule and probably earn in the low six figures now. If WWE had the option of signing him, they would have, as those in talent decision-making were high on him. So it's clear that WWE realizes, we dropped the ball on him, but you guys were loyal to him and saw an opportunity and made him a new deal. You exercised the right to renew that deal. But AJ probably had a sense of loyalty to you guys too. He wasn't looking to leave in 05 as best I've ever read. Was that what really happened? Was he looking to stick around?
And man, it's fun as we're sitting here, Slammiversary 05, it's 2025, and we're looking back 20 years ago. But Conrad, when I'll do like panel discussions and that kind of stuff, and a lot of times I'll get, hey man, a lot of people, I think they just asked this. Me and Shivani did one at a VIP for AEW. Hey, Jeff, do you think that they were basically trying to give me credit? Hey, you did Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, and it gave you a list of the TNA, and I turn it around every time because I think about Lucky, how grateful I am when I look at the roster kind of from day one and as it built up. But AJ, when I really drill down to it, we had some guys that, and I think this was a part of the day in and day out relationships that I had with everybody across the roster. I wasn't universally liked by any stretch of the imagination, but I did care for the individuals. And obviously I would lead with, look, I have to do what's best for the TNA brand. But hey, AJ, let's think about it this way. And I think AJ, from a very early kid, if you will, early stage of his career, I think he built a trust with our brand and with us. No like and trust. But at the end of the day, I got to give AJ and others all the credit in the world, because I think they fundamentally, whether it was in our conversations or conversations, they'd go other places to have a conversation. But at the end of the day, I think AJ understood the mentality that, I don't want to say the grass isn't greener, but there's only certain amount of spots in a roster, period. No matter how you slice it and dice it, that you really have to figure out. And, AJ now is going into, God, he's got to be getting close to 30-year career. And so if you're going to have longevity, you don't need to think just about next week, next month, or even next year. You kind of got to look for the long haul. And I think AJ understood that he was building his brand. Got to give credit to Bill Behrens, who advised him all the time. AJ, his wife, Wendy, and his kind of mentality that he just wanted to be treated fair. He knew his schedule. He knew what we were about. He knew he was a top dog with us, all the things. So it was like we always say, a win-win relationship. And AJ, I got to give the guy all the credit in the world, because he'd sit down. At the end of the day, he wanted to be paid. He wanted to be paid well. And he wanted to be marketed and pushed. And that's why I felt kind of bad for the guy when, Hogan comes in and they're doing kind of the silly stuff. And I'm thinking, if he wants to do all the silly stuff, non-AJ style stuff, hell, he could have gone to WWE and made a lot more money in this stuff. But AJ kind of stuck to the brand. And during this time, I remember it in that he just wanted to be fair. He wanted us to be fair, and he wanted to be fair about it. And he was always very, very reasonable in his request, and he always got bumps in pay. Every contract that went along from the day he started until the day he left, he got raises.
You want to hear something crazy?
Oh, boy.
AJ Styles has been wrestling a year and a half. He started wrestling a year and a half after Goldberg. So Goldberg wrestled and then had all these long gaps and left and did, outside the wrestling business stuff.
Yeah.
He started in 97. AJ started at some point in 98. So we're talking a year and change later.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? The parallel that you don't think about AJ and Goldberg starting around the same time.
That's a little fun fact. That's
there
cool.
There they are.
Damn.
Let's talk about DDP. It's written here that in the Observer that several people were strong on not bringing DDP back after they had to negotiate to get him to put over Monty Brown in a tag match on May 15th. My own feeling is they need some recognizable faces early on. And with Jeff Hardy and Kevin Nash unavailable for the first show, DDP is at least that. But I can see not using him because that was a really lame deal, not being agreeable to putting Brown over. At 49 years old, he has to recognize his role in the company, and it's here to grow and make stars. It's not like they're jobbing him left and right. And it's only been Jarrett in a title match and Brown, who is a heel, being groomed for a title shot. And it was a tag anyway. But I think Dallas realized with Dusty out that he doesn't have a best friend on the committee and might not be taken care of. And he figured he was on the way out anyway. DDP, after it was made clear they weren't going to use him anymore, went on the internet to save face, claiming he came in to help the company get on television, and he and Nash did so it was the right time for them to leave. Of course, these days, we love us some DDP. What was really going on here back then? Were you just in your growing pains of growing the company?
I hate to say it. This is going to come as a shocker to you. Dave was dealing with, I'll say diplomatically as possible, incomplete information. DDP, I think there's a definition. When you said negotiating for a finish, I think that goes along with just about anybody that would be coming from a guy in stature. I'll call it a negotiation because I think there's different ways that you can put a guy over and different finishes. There's thousands of variations of all kinds of finishes. Dallas, to me, and again, you have to give, because Dusty was in here. I don't know specifics that we're actually talking about, but he was in here leading creative for a period of that. But Dallas was never a problem. He wanted to come in, and his kind of unwritten rule that he would voice was, hey, man, if I'm going to be there, I want to make it impactful. Whatever I do, I want to be a part of it. I want to dive in. And his headspace, to me, was always in the right frame of mind. And at the end of the day, what talent who hadn't climbed his heights isn't protective of the brand they've built, if you will.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about Jim Mitchell. It's written here that he is being talked with about managing Abyss and maybe others. But this note jumped out. Jeff, it says, because they run at Universal, they won't be allowed to do the devil gimmick. So he's going to be offered the Carnival Barker gimmick that he didn't like several months ago when the sides were talking. Obviously, we like Jim Mitchell packaged with Abyss. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, The Undertaker needed a pallbearer. So, yeah, I like it. But is this true that Universal wouldn't let you do a devil gimmick and you had to do a carnival barker gimmick? What can you tell us about this?
I mean, that's where, was that from an Observer or Torch?
Observer.
I mean, that is like 100% sci-fi fiction. Like, and I was looking at the research, you know, even me who was living it, breathing it, eating, I forget that there was a time frame when Abyss didn't have Mitchell, but when they were put together, because Abyss's work and psychology and mannerisms, and I'm just calling it, you know, being the QB of so many things, Mitchell and him just worked together so well. You know, Abyss didn't need a manager that took bumps, that did a lot of crazy stuff. That he just needed to be able to be a hell of a storyteller. And James is that. He was fantastic for Abyss and himself, and they made magic together. But Conrad, I mean, you talk about science fiction. Universal, not, oh, come on. Just,
so you could have done a devil worshiper gimmick in Universal.
Yes.
Did Universal ever say, we don't want you doing that in the park anymore?
No.
Oh, anything?
Never. Not they didn't wait. Now, inside the studio, we rented the place. It was ours to do with it. So there was no ethical clause in that. You know, now if you want to talk about us shooting stuff around, you know, rides and attractions and the Incredible Hulk,
That's
and
different. Yeah.
Completely different, because but that's all in a licensing set. But those guys, what a great relationship we had through the years. But no, they never weighed in on anything that went within the four walls.
Like if you were to do an angle like you did in Memphis once, where somebody's getting covered in yellow paint, you just got to clean it up.
That's it.
And I assume as long as you abide by the fire code, you can run whatever pyro you want. You don't have to run it past anybody.
Yeah, that's, I mean, correct. But the fire marshal,
yeah, he's the real issue there, not the building.
Exactly.
But like if you wanted to do a seance and you wanted to like sacrifice a small animal and put it on TV, they're cool with it.
I think building the fire might have been an issue, but the animal wouldn't have been.
Listen to you. What's wrong with us?
What's wrong with you?
Hey, well, you said you could do whatever. I mean, listen, we're going to push the envelope.
There you go.
Hey, we are live, and we do want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. I want to ask about Low-Key, but before I do, Stephen Whitney is with us, and he says, Jeff, would you ever go back to TNA for one final match? And if you did, who would it be against? I know your brain doesn't really work that way, but if you were going to have like, if you do a farewell tour like John Cena one year, and you say, hey, this is it. This is really it. I would like to see you wrestle one last time in a TNA ring. I think that would be cool. Is there an opponent that would make sense for one last match in TNA in an alternate universe?
You know what? I'd love to get a little engagement. We got James, and I know he wants to be a part of the show, but we got Darren and others. You know, you're right. My brain doesn't think that way, but a last match inside a TNA ring, I mean, because we're playing the what ifs. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, we just talked about a guy that, you know, AJ Styles. That's not going to happen. But man, Conrad, I'm just who my partner Jay Lethal. I mean, that would feel unique and special. Man, there's a whole kind of
wait. Why did you go immediately to AJ? Couldn't happen. That'll never happen.
Well, that's right. Never say never. Okay.
Given all the crazy shit we've seen recently, like
kidding. Yeah. Yes. I mean, yeah. The business. I mean,
so AJ's the answer. If it could happen, you and AJ.
I mean, that'd be special. I don't know if he'd be up for it though.
Well, somebody we know is not going to be up for it is Low-Key. Meltzer would say there is no interest in all in using Low-Key. He's made a lot of enemies and said a lot of things about people in the company, including Jeff Jarrett and the booking committee, which largely has been left alone thus far when it came to booking decisions, but was told the company wouldn't consider bringing him back. So let's talk about that. You know, I guess Low-Key, the real life guy behind the character, I think his name is Brandon. He's been categorized to me as being a bit of a malcontent. But man, as a guy who first saw him, I think in '02, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I love it and I'm in. And I think he's one of we talk about before here, some of the great what ifs. Low key's probably my biggest what if in the history of my wrestling fandom. But we did see, he played hokey pokey with you guys. He'd be in favor, he'd be out of favor, or so it felt like, because sometimes we see him, sometimes we wouldn't. Is low key kind of like your version of what your dad had maybe a love-hate relationship with Austin Idol? Do you have that with low key, or who is your Austin Idol in TNA, if one exists?
See, and I never oh man, I'm just chuckling thinking my dad, how his comments, what he would talk about Idol, and I think nowadays, did he really mean all of that? Because my God. But at the end of the day, they always did business together. I had no idea till I started the podcast. Now I know why I never got a Christmas card from Low-Key. He has said some pretty divisive things about myself. I never viewed him that way. And I can remember often in creative, and everybody would change up opinion. Yeah, let's bring him in. No, let's don't. Let's all this kind of stuff. I always looked at him, man, in my delusional optimism, if we can just guide him down this way and this way, because Conrad, I'm like you, his skill set was so unique, but uber talented. And he worked, and here's where I always looked at him as the differentiator. His offense had a thread of extreme violence and viciousness that draws money. And so he brought a different dynamic to the X division. I always said that. But man, oh man, whether it was talent or creative or whatever, you always heard, well, he didn't want to do this and a little hard to do business there and this and that. So there ended up, hindsight's 2020, there always was an issue. I never personally had an issue with him ever. Now, he don't like me and has voiced that multiple times and multiple platforms, but it is what it is. But, I would definitely not say Idol. He was my Austin Idol. In the early days, Raven would irritate the hell out of me. But at the end of the day, I wanted to work with him and figure out how to make money and keep on keeping on. Man, we had some good times. I'm sure there were some tense moments back in the day, but I don't know, Conrad. Can't be. It's not Low Key. Maybe a Raven.
Maybe a Raven. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Observer says there's a lot of interest in using good Mexican workers in TNA, but with Conan and Shocker as regulars politically, it looks to have shut the door for CMLL talent like Mystico, who there is interest in. Conan has strongly recommended some other talent, but hey, Mystico, that is interesting to think that Mystico was on the radar 20 years ago. What were the issues? I mean, was that always an issue, the CMLL AAA thing? How did you navigate that? And did you ever make any headway, or is it just, hey, they're meant to be mortal enemies?
I never, to my best recollection, maybe I slightly touched on it. I would have loved to have heard Pena's version of the heat, but to this day, it's nuclear heat and has been for years and years and years and years. But yeah, that was the issue in the 05, that they just didn't cross pollinate under really any circumstance. That's what it was. But years ago, Pena, when he started, there was the line in the sand, and it hadn't really ever gone away.
How long's Mystico been on your radar? I mean, it's written here that you were a fan 20 years ago.
Yes.
And that would have been, I think at the time he would have been 22 years old. I think he started wrestling like 8 years prior to this. So he's like maybe got a driver's license at best. So, I mean, clearly wrestling is in his blood. What was it about Mystico that made him special to you even 20 years ago?
His talent superseded his connection. Look, and I don't even want to call it the gimmick, but and Mike TNA was my authority, and the numbers that he was doing, and I don't say the manner he got over, but in that market, there's over and then there's really over. And when he took it to another level and just, I'll just say kind of getting into the DNA and understanding what a drawing card he was back then. And now here we are 20 years later, but a guy that can be that kind of box office attraction. I mean, that's exactly why WWE went after him. Okay, this guy has something to the Spanish audience that we need to monetize. It just never worked out. It's when you rename a guy, and there's who knows what you really land on, but the dude has been on top for 25 years, 22 years.
We got to talk briefly about One Night Stand. I guess originally they wanted to have Jerry Lynn wrestle in a match here at One Night Stand. And I guess it was originally supposed to be Lance Storm versus Jerry Lynn. And maybe Jerry Lynn is nixed because according to the rumor and innuendo, Vince McMahon did not want TNA guys to appear on this show. Of course, Jerry Lynn is under contract to TNA. So instead, we got Lance Storm versus Chris Jericho. Chat me up. If Vince would have been okay with WWE guys appearing on One Night Stand, would you have allowed it?
Hell yes.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer, especially during this time. But even during the Spike days, yes. I mean, from my entire mindset going, and I've thought about this even before Global Force, I publicly kind of laid out a vision that, trying to work with other promotions. And when Spike got involved, we had to massage the Ring of Honor situation. But I go back to, even the territory days. The best case scenario is monetizing other folks' brands, and you let them monetize your brand and make it work. I mean, we'll call it AEW's Forbidden Door concept or event. That's three brands coming together and making something that the fans just immerse themselves in.
I want to ask you about some not awesome news. On May 31st, you guys are going to announce that, hey, that taping in Orlando is canceled because there's no TV outlet. So we're not going to run a show, but you let some of the top guys know, hey, we're going to pay you for 1.5 shows. So whatever your day rate was, we're going to pay you 1.5 times that. So this is a big morale boost because a lot of guys didn't expect it. But when you're canceling a TV taping like this, AKA there's no income coming in, but you're still paying the guys, I'm sure it's great for the guys. But boy, the idea of the money going out and none coming in, this is not a sustainable business model. How nervous or scared were you when you had to cancel that? Are you still keeping the blind faith, or are you starting to get a little nervous here?
Well, and that's where I wish I had a complete recollection, but you kind of have to look at all the factors here, Conrad, that the Carters said no to another investor. We made the decision, and if I remember, and that's why I was trying to look at the research, we still had to create content for our international markets. We had a few in 2005, but was it going to be worth the cash flow situation to go to Orlando and pay for a full-blown production just for international?
Jeff's doing his best, guys, but I want to tell you, you don't have to do your best. You can go to conradsguy.com. If you're trying to grow your small business, you got to talk to my guy, Eric Nichols at Envision Marketing Consultants. He really helped me grow my business 15 years ago. I was buying radio and TV, but I didn't really know how to buy digital. Well, that was until I met Eric. My understanding of the space went better, and my cost for my leads went down. I'm talking to you if you're looking to grow your B2B or retail or food and beverage or manufacturing or even nonprofits. I mean, dude, if he can help me with mortgages, he can help you too. Help with what exactly? What about SEO or pay-per-click or targeted display? Streaming ads on Hulu, YouTube, or Amazon. If your company's doing any of that or they want to, you got to hurry to conradsguy.com right now. and let my buddy Eric Nichols take a look. I think you'll be impressed, and you'll be glad that you're on board. We also want to thank everybody for showing up with us here today. We know Aaron Loves Wrestling Podcast is with us, and I see he's asked a question here. Jeff Jarrett, will you be at AEW All In Texas? I'd love to meet Double J. Yes, he is. And I don't know that it's been officially announced on social yet today, but if it hasn't yet, it's going to be soon. Jeff Jarrett and the Queen, the King of the Mountain and the Queen, are going to be joining us live at StarCast. You should too. STARRCAST.com is where you can pick up your bracelets. We've still got some really fun things to announce. They're going to be included with your bracelet purchase. So if you haven't already, I'm telling you, this is going to be the best value we've ever had at StarCast. You have to take my word for it, but the announcement is coming. Go snag them before it's too late. You will regret not getting a platinum weekend pass or a gold weekend pass. You're going to be included on all the activities, and man, it's going to be a lot of fun. And yes, the King and Queen will be there. Come see Double J live. It's happening on July 11th and 12th at the Sheraton in Arlington. And one bracelet gets you access. Go grab one right now at starcast.com. We appreciate James wanting to know if he can be on the show at some point. We will work towards that. We're going to have to just kill Jeff's video. We've been after him to get real internet. He just won't do it. We're going to do our best to try to power through here the rest of the show.
Oh, my gosh.
We'll skip around a little bit and just jump right into the card. I don't think there's any chance we'll finish this one the way we're going right now. But the actual Slammiversary show itself, Jeff, talk to us a little bit about the important tentpole events of TNA. We know there's a Bound for Glory. We know there's a Slammiversary. Now, if this were WWE, sort of draw comparisons to what is your SummerSlam, what is your Royal Rumble, what is your WrestleMania, and we'll try to see if we can make out anything that you're saying.
How's it working now, pal?
Not good.
Son of a bitch. I have no idea. I apologize. Oh, Conrad.
What's WrestleMania? Is that Bound for Glory?
Bound for Glory's WrestleMania. Also, Halloween Havoc was a WCW staple. That was the kind of their counter programming in the fall. Ours in the spring was Lockdown, all cage format. But our anniversary show, if you will, which is a more traditional mindset, Puerto Rico, every territory had their anniversary shows for the most part. But that was our anniversary. And at this point, early in our career, but we still wanted to come out as loud and proud as we possibly could.
We're going to do our best. We're going to kill all of our video and just start showing slides through the rest of the show and try to talk about the pay-per-view. We're doing our best here, boys and girls. We don't have internet in Tennessee today, but we're working on it. Let's talk about the pay-per-view. Shark Boy is going to win a 6-way elimination match over Delirious, Zach Gowen, Jarrell Clark, Amazing Red, and Elix Skipper. What a freaking home run, ahead of its time opportunity. We know Delirious is going to go on to really become a Ring of Honor legend as a booker. Zach Gowen is literally the one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest here. Jarrell Clark was getting a lot of buzz on the independents, especially in the South. He's one of the first guys we got to see do a 630. This is very much the era where we're showing off what people can do acrobatically. And, man, is there anybody who did it better than the Amazing Red? And then there's Elix Skipper, a guy that we are big fans of here on the program. I mean, I loved his work in WCW, but I felt like he really became a much bigger star, and I loved his presentation here in TNA. And it just feels like in an alternate universe, he could have enjoyed so much more success in WWE. It didn't happen that way, but we talk about it all the time, man. Timing is everything. And I think, when we're talking about great what ifs, man, if Amazing Red would have come on the scene a few years later and been able to stay healthy the entire time, was there a limit on what that guy could do, Jeff?
Conrad, when I look at the whole mixture of this, Shark Boy, Zach,
yes,
it is very, very diversified, and it was kind of a scrambled egg, but that was one of the things at TNA that, when you put it on paper, you go, okay, this is an interesting combination. Let's see how it plays out. But Jarrell, you nailed all of them. And, this match delivered. If you go back and watch, I'll call it the innovation on how they made all the characters, if you will, the personalities. It became, and by this time, it was a staple of a TNA pay-per-view.
Why don't you think Jarrell Clark enjoyed more success in wrestling? What was it? Promos? Was it character? Was there a personality issue? I have to admit, I never met him, but it does feel like he had a little bit of buzz, especially in this era. We'll call it '05, but I think he's finishing up like just a handful of years later. Oh yeah, according to Cage Match, his last match was in 2011.
Okay. I was about to say, Conrad, what is the real story here? Because a lot of things, you look at talent across the board, staying power. There's several members well, you could just go look at modern day wrestling or go back 10, 20, 30 years, guys that kind of have the staying power, stick with it through. And I tell everybody it comes to one of my seminars or, hey, if you get into this for fame or fortune, you probably ought to step back because it is a hard business to get going in. You got to have staying power. But no, 2011 is his. So shit, Conrad, he's been out of the business almost 15 years.
I just wonder why it didn't work out. Like it feels like he could have been a bigger deal. And even Delirious. I mean, Delirious was getting. I mean, he was a solid independent worker 20 years ago.
Hell yes. Not just solid, really good. But I think Delirious had a charted course. He would be able to tell obviously better than me. But look at his career. He's done all right for himself as far as consistently getting the paycheck, if you will, and probably a lot less bumps.
Next up, we've got Shocker picking up a win over Alex Shelley. It was 3 1/4 stars. Meltzer would say it was just a hell of a performance by Shelley here, especially when it came to mat wrestling. The storyline was Shelley was going to use his European moves to overcome Shocker's lucha mat work. Shocker did a drop kick off the apron to the floor after Shelley had missed a pescado and crashed. Shocker did a tope, and both guys bonked heads on the moves. Shelley got tons of near falls with various cradles until Shocker got one of his own for the pin. This was my favorite match of the show. It got 3 1/4 stars. What'd you think of Shocker and Alex Shelley here at Slammiversary 05?
Well, I'm seeing my light, so this may be froze up. I'm pissed off about this, Conrad, so you'll get some rough comments. Alex Shelley always was above and beyond delivering a match when he needed to deliver, and Shocker was not the easiest guy to work with in this setting. He wasn't quote unquote a regular, if you will. Obviously this is early in Alex's career, but I'm pretty cool to hear you say it was your favorite match because Alex knew from the day I met him, he knew how to adapt to most any style.
If Shocker wouldn't have got on that shit, would he have been a difference maker for TNA, do you think?
Everything's relative. He would have been a difference maker in the business. He had a unique charisma that translated across the board.
I guess what I'm wondering is, we always heard that Paul Heyman was really trying to make SmackDown sort of the home for his Latin star. And so Vince McMahon wanted one of the leading men on the SmackDown show to be his Latin matinee idol, his Latin star. And so we saw that, with Eddie Guerrero, we saw it with Rey Mysterio, and we saw it with Alberto Del Rio. If Shocker could have stayed, kept it between the ditches, as we like to say here in the South, would that have been the plan for him here in TNA to sort of help grow the Spanish speaking audience here in America?
No doubt. I think from the beginning of TNA, the early World X Cup and my relationship with Antonio Pena and trying to develop that from literally day one, knowing that, the Hispanic audience, not just globally, I'm talking about here in America, I still think to this day, it's an untapped audience. You can kind of look at, WWE acquired AAA. There's a reason they did that. Yes, licensing, but that audience, and you look at all the Hispanic influence on every program, not just AEW or WWE, but kind of across the board, that lucha style is indoctrinated into professional wrestling. It's no longer, got to go to Mexico to see lucha. No, you can see lucha on just about any wrestling show.
I want to mention the next match to you. It's our pal Ron Killings picking up a win over the Outlaw. We know him as Billy Gunn, but this match is maybe the weakest on the show. It gets 1.25 stars. And, listen, this is not the best match. There's an awkward spot that seemingly pulled the fans out of it. Ron is trying to do a hip toss, and I don't think Billy knew that was coming. And the crowd kind of dies as the guys fall on each other. And listen, shit like that happens. But I wanted to bring this up because Billy has done a bunch of shoot interviews and been really honest that this was not a good time in his personal life. He was going through it. I think he described, his life as being a mess at the time. Was that apparent to you at the 20 years ago? I mean, is that something that was even on your radar? I mean, I realize today in 2025, you have a different approach on those sort of things, but were you even aware that he was in a tough spot back then?
Bingo, Conrad. Zero clue. One thing, I want to know who that referee was during that match. But, and look, me and Billy, we go back 25, 28 years, early 90s, the new generation with the guns. We go back forever. But during this time, Conrad, I had zero idea. And I've shared that with him over the last couple of years. I had no idea. But look, I still believe, Billy's unique talent and coming off that run, he still meant something. I don't even recall the spot that messed up, but no, I wasn't aware, Conrad, at all.
Next up, we've got a couple of seemingly day one TNA guys that you and I are both big fans of. Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens are going to retain the NWA tag titles over Petey Williams and Eric Young. Fans are supporting Chris Candido. They're even chanting for Candido. As a reminder, he passed away in late April. A fun match here. I really enjoy this. Jimmy Hart is at ringside at this point. I guess he's going to be debuting as the Naturals mystery manager. They've been teasing that for a few weeks. Is this because Jimmy's just local? I mean, I think even back then he was in Florida, was he not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he was always, during this time, Jimmy, these are the early days of the Impact Zone. He was dialed in. Jimmy knew how to promote. He'd stand out in the park with his megaphone. Jimmy, that's why he's a lifer. There is no job that he really would not tackle. Marketing, promotion, radio, managing at ringside. And so, no, that was one of those nights that, and I don't know if we did any storyline driven with it, but no, he was a part of it. And again, our anniversary show.
I think I speak for you on this. If you're a promoter and you're looking for legends to bring in, Jeff and I give 2 thumbs up to Jimmy Hart. If you put Jimmy Hart on your show, you're going to be glad you did. I mean, he's going to make sure all the fans leave with a smile on their face. Fair to say, Jeff?
That's at the very, and gosh, Conrad, when was this? Not long ago. Oh boy, I think maybe it's an AEW, a Dynamite. A lot of folks don't realize Jimmy Hart was a national pop rock star with the Gentrys. He had number ones. Certainly wasn't the Beatles, but I mean, Jimmy knew how to communicate with an audience long before he hung around Jerry Lawler and broke in as the King's manager, and Lawler teaching him in those early days. And then obviously gone on. A lot of people just know him as kind of Hulk Hogan's sidekick. Jimmy's had, Jesus, at this point, a 60, 65, 70 years in the entertainment business. How old is Jimmy? 80. So, but yeah, Jimmy knows what he's doing. Jimmy knows how to put butts in seats. That's simple.
He's 81 years old.
Okay. So, yeah.
And still doing it, still making appearances.
Yep. Wow.
Let's talk about Samoa Joe. He's going to be wrestling Sanjay Dutt here. I'm a big fan of this. I love both of these guys, especially in this era. There's some chance here for Joe where some people are familiar with him. And I guess this is really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to debut Samoa Joe in a big way. Who better to ask than Sanjay Dutt? Of course, we know that this is going to lead to an incredible run, an undefeated streak, and all that jazz and much more with Samoa Joe. And Samoa Joe is going to be one half of the biggest TNA pay-per-view buy rate of all time. It's going to be him and Kurt Angle. But we got to start somewhere and establish who the heck this guy is. And, yeah, we get it. All that and more. 2.5 stars, 6 minutes and 24 seconds. Samoa Joe gets the win. Why was your buddy Sanjay the right opponent to be Joe's first opponent?
I was sitting here, not just this match, but the entire card on, and I think we talked about it on a episode here recently about where Dusty was inputted on this, or collectively, was this a group booking? Because I had the same thought. Conrad, it's funny, just like you said, specific in this match, but then I backed up and said, how did that opening match come together? And then because I think Dusty was involved, but Joe, and this was his debut, right, for the company?
Yeah.
I just, from the night he came in, Joe knows how, still does to this day, he knows how to command an audience. He knows how to bring them in, and he showed it here.
It is interesting to think, the incredible career he's had, and this really is the debut, Slammiversary 2005. We know almost immediately, 2 days later, he's going to win a 3-way over Elix Skipper and Shark Boy. It's going to be a fun run for Samoa Joe and TNA.
Big time fun run.
I do want to ask you about the Ring of Honor comment. I bring this up because once upon a time, and we all know why, there was it felt like an edict. Maybe it was official, maybe it was unofficial. We don't do business with Ring of Honor. We don't talk about Ring of Honor. They're a non-starter. And Joe is announced here as having held the Ring of Honor title for almost 2 years and being the current Ring of Honor Pure Champion. So you're hearing Mike Tenay put over Ring of Honor and how, accomplished Samoa Joe is there. I guess that's one of the reasons that, and maybe Joe's the perfect guy to sort of bridge that gap, because a guy like Joe, you do want to establish to people who are seeing him for the first time, hey, this guy's a badass. You may not be familiar with him, but trust me, here's what all he's done. You couldn't really do that for Joe without talking about Ring of Honor. Is that it? Or had you guys sort of cleared the air with Ring of Honor, at least on some level at this point?
I mean, I think it was coming up when Spike started factoring in. I don't say the relationship went sideways, but they're the ones that said, hey, we're paying you all this licensing money, and you're going to let these guys go be monetized elsewhere. Isn't that what we're paying for? We're paying for this TV show, and really what we're paying for is the talent on the TV show. That was their entire mindset. I've always come from the mindset, and Tenay will tell you, and he has to say, look, approaching play-by-play and color, the play-by-play guy comes from a position, I don't want to call it from statistics, but, from the day we came on the air, NWA, we licensed it, but we wanted to give historical facts, and Steamboat was a champion, and, Dory Funk was a champion, and so on and so on and so on. But, we never had an issue talking about somebody's history. I never thought that would bear any fruit. So we always talked about a guy's history. The Ring of Honor situation, like I said, came from Spike having.
I believe that later, Jeff, but at this point, the Feinstein controversy had happened.
Okay.
That was 2004. So this is one of the first times we're going to see you guys really acknowledge and talk about Ring of Honor on air.
I got you. I hear you.
So that was okay. Let's move on. Bobby Roode's going to beat Lance Storm. Scott D'Amore is going to interfere freely. But really what I want to talk about here is it's written in the Observer. Hoyt is a cult favorite in Orlando because he drinks with so many of the fans after the shows at a local bar. First of all, I love me some Lance Hoyt. Super nice guy, great guy. Well, never mind. He's a monster with a mohawk and he's a killer. Wink, wink. But in real life, he is a great guy. And I wanted to ask you about that because I know that you've probably got an opinion as somebody who's seen it all and done it all. Like your old pal Owen Hart, man, he was kind of famous for staying with fans, couch surfing, getting rides from fans. I mean, Foley did this too. There's lots of guys who would get really familiar with fans and have like a fan relationship. And I know that's part of the culture in Japan. I mean, you have these sponsor dinners. Said differently, it's a super fan who's like, hey, I'll pay for y'all to eat and drink. Just come hang out. And I want to hear some wrestling stories and spend time with the guys. I get it. But was there a best practice? Is there a time when you feel like, man, if they're so accessible, they're not a star. You lose some of that. You got to keep your distance, blah, blah, blah. Like we hear guys like, the original Sheik, Sabu's uncle. He really did that, and others did too. Where did you land on it?
As far as hanging with the fans?
Would a guy like Lance Hoyt have gotten heat if it's written in the
Yeah.
Observer? He's a cult favorite because he drinks with the fans.
And that's more, I'm not going to say science fiction, but it's funny how Lance was, it feels like kind of singled out because Conrad, after, because when we went to Orlando, we'd be there for 2 days, 3 days at a time. That there was an ale house crowd, there was a Hooters crowd, there was another place down the street. The hotel bar would be sold out many nights. So there are many instances in Orlando where talent and fans mingled. And I was, I guess the simple way hey, what guys do on their own time for the most part, that's their time. Let them deal with it any way they need be. You're not going to keep fans and talent apart.
Let's talk a little bit about the next match. It's America's Most Wanted, Chris Harris and James Storm taking on Conan and BG James. At one point, we do get a "We Want Outlaw" chant. When Billy Gunn comes out, even after the match, fans are still chanting New Age Outlaws. Conan's trying to apologize. BG James, Road Dogg, is going to get upset, argue with him, and walk out on him. So Chris Harris and James Storm pick up the win. We know we're headed towards putting the New Age Outlaws back together, if you will. And I get that fans want to see that because it was such a big deal at this point, 7 years prior, and nostalgia is a big deal. But why was it time to split up 4 Live Crew? Could you have made it go a little longer?
3 Live Crew. Well, and we covered this recently. Truth, Road Dogg, and Conan, they all came together and they just had unique chemistry. Well, when you put Billy on the scene, you can't unsee, as the kids say, you can't unsee Brian and Billy, the New Age Outlaws, because of their just red hot run not that long ago at this time. And so when Billy came on the scene, it just made sense. We had to figure out how we were going to navigate. And this was in the middle of the transition.
I mean, do you think there was a way that the 4 Live Crew could have worked?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I just don't. I don't think the chemistry would have been there. That's my opinion. But
3-way match coming up here. Christopher Daniels is going to win a 3-way over Michael Shane and Chris Sabin. So he's going to retain the X title. Meltzer would say is not as good as I expected. And he gave it 3.25 stars. I do want to ask you, though, I mean, Michael Shane / Matt Bentley, I mean, he was one of the original Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy graduates. I think he might actually be Shawn's cousin. Is that real?
I don't know if he is. I mean, some kind of distant relative. That's let's ask Wikipedia. But
why didn't he do more? Why wasn't he longer for TNA?
You kind of think, I know that he moved back home at one point. Again, a guy like Bentley and Michael Shane, Jarrell, others, there wasn't any one thing, Conrad, to me that you can kind of put your finger on. It's just kind of the persistence and the timing and the opportunities. And again, the old Dutch Mantel mindset comes out. Hey, Jeff, if you don't, well, not just him, my dad also had a really strong sense in this. And he would preach this over and over and over. If you don't change the bottom of the card, the top of the card gets old a lot quicker, and they take the fall for it. So Lawler and Mole Man were notorious, and it's kind of the set of circumstances they were also dealt with. Outside of 2 or 3 guys on top, they'd like to have create a churn, and they thought it was healthy for business and talent, not just their own business, but talent as a way to just keep moving. Now, this is going back to the territory days. Nowadays, it's just much harder to do that. But I think the same principle applies.
It is interesting to think about, what could have been. As I understand it, he's going to step back from wrestling and do some band stuff. And He even came out and did some stuff, I guess, as a one-off with TNA in 11, and then again with you in Global Force in 2015.
Shot here.
But in an alternate universe, I was convinced that guy was going to be a mainstay and had a big upside. Timing's everything.
First Ultimate X match participant. He was really, really good.
Do you think that's the lesson today? Because I feel like we've said it a bunch. Perseverance. Feels like it's come up a bunch, whether it's Jarrell Clark or Matt Bentley or however you want to phrase it.
Well, what is the old saying? 90% of life is how you respond. 10% what happens to you. 90% how you respond.
That's right.
I get that quote wrong, but I look at my own life, Conrad, and I have learned more and set myself up for success or good times or productivity, all in the valleys of my life. If there are no valleys, there are no hilltops. I just think that sounds so simple, but man, Conrad, it is so damn true that in this business, I said it a little while ago, it is the lenses that some folks have when they get into this business. And I don't care how hot you get, and I could go off in a rabbit hole, no matter how red hot you get, whether it's a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, 12-month run, it's still a very finite term that this business keeps on churning and keeps on churning and keeps on churning. And that's why I like when I think of the fundamentals and how I was blessed to having the opportunity for a 90-minute live wrestling show every Saturday morning for the first 7 years of my career. That's where you really learn to sink or swim, and you have to learn how to perform and talk and work and do all those things. And it really, I'm circling back to, it gave me the skill set to persevere, to have persistence. And we've had some offline discussions, and I've had some discussions with folks literally all around the world, entering into my 40th year. I think at the very top of that, Conrad, the one thing that I hope that maybe a younger generation will look at and say, hey, man, yeah, he was a lifer. He did this, he did that. At the end of the day, man, his passion for the business took him through the good and the bad times with persistence and perseverance. I just think the 3 Ps are vital to success in this business.
Let's talk about the main event. We're going to see Raven winning the NWA title in a King of the Mountain match over previous champions AJ Styles, Abyss, Sean Waltman, and Monty Brown. Let me explain a King of the Mountain match to you, and we'll have Double J try to defend it. The rules of the match are that Zbyszko has the belt at ringside, and as soon as someone wins a fall, and by the way, it is falls count anywhere, then he can take the belt from Zbyszko, use a ladder, climb it up, and hang it up like a reverse ladder match. And the guy losing the fall would have to spend 2 minutes in a penalty box. Meltzer would say it came off as messy with one fall after another and lots of weapons. Raven's the only guy who winds up bleeding in the thing. Waltman and Styles are climbing when Abyss tips it over. Styles is going to take a header over the top rope through a table. Monty Brown's going to pounce Abyss off the ladder through a vertical table. And then Raven grabs the belt, climbs up, and hangs it. And it's written here that it's a pretty anticlimactic finish, but the crowd is chanting for Raven. And the show goes off the air. 3 stars. You really like the King of the Mountain match, and you think it's been given a bad rap. I know online fans sort of dismissed the idea of a quote-unquote reverse ladder match as almost quote-unquote Russo nonsense. But you like it. So, Mr. Jarrett, the floor is yours. Convince us to fall in love with the King of the Mountain format the way you have.
And that's one of the things that Russo, I guess you could say, gets the blame for it. This wasn't his concept. And look, the innovation of the Ultimate X, a ladder match, if you will, without a ladder, and the King of the Mountain match is it's a ladder match in reverse. As opposed to climbing a ladder and getting the belt, It is a situation that you have to get a pinfall to get qualified to win the match. And so kind of a two-step, and you climb up the ladder and hang the belt to win the match. In the kind of think tank, if you will, thinking through this, okay, if a guy gets beat and there's 5 guys in it, what is the real penalty? Just does he just get pinned and nothing's going to happen to him? So let's penalize the guy and take him out of action for 2 minutes. That's the whole mindset. The thing that I think sometimes got complicated is, I'll say, the explanation when people, and I'm guilty of this as anybody, try to over-explain it and try to make it too complicated. And also, you kind of hit on something, and I know that we are when I say we at TNA, we're guilty multiple different ways. But when you get tables and weapons, if you will, involved in this, I think it can water it down. Just kept to the 5 talent and the ladder to climb it and hang it. Simplified it a lot. But of course, talent gets to the show and they want to do this spot and this spot. You've got a penalty box, and hey, let's do a bump off this. And AJ took some beautiful bumps on that. But Conrad, for the most part, it's a reverse ladder match. And the thing that most folks get hung up on is the penalty box. Hey guys, I don't understand the penalty box. Well, it's just what I said. If a guy's going to take a pinfall, let's make it mean something and at least take them out of the match for 2 minutes as a consequence of, getting pinned to the mat.
I love the love that you have for the reverse ladder match. It makes me happy. Instagram Wrestling Historian is with us here live, and he says, in hindsight, how long would you have kept your winning streak in the King of the Mountain matches going based on what Dusty Rhodes wanted? Thanks in advance.
How long would I kept the winning streak going? Well, hell, as long as I wanted to. But the angle we did, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but we you put the graphic up, and I was removed from this match and somebody else was put in. Why did we do that? Well, Dusty wasn't real sure, and I guess you could say me and the committee weren't real sure on what direction we were going. Again, you got to remember the time frame of everything. To say things were tense back in the offices probably be an understate. The potential investor, we paid talent. I know the internet cut out on that, but getting talent paid for not working a taping was a monumental task. But that was for kind of what we touched on with the AJ Styles renewing. We wanted to give the talent not the respect, but the confidence to us in a brand that, hey man, we ain't going anywhere. And
peace of mind.
And me and my father knew that more than anybody, because we were well aware that we got somebody to the dance, and Bob Carter said, not only no, hell no. So how do we navigate all of that? And that was a part of paying the talent. And now when you get to the King of the Mountain match a couple of weeks later, Dusty's in the middle of that, and we weren't real sure what direction anything was going. Although I think it was unanimous in a lot of ways. Pull Jeff out. Okay, Raven's the unanimous winner. I think everybody wanted to change, and I said, okay, if that's really the route everybody is going, I'm not fighting City Hall. So that more or less, and then the angle we did could set us up for storytelling, in the future.
I do want to ask you, because it does feel like, with there being, rumors of you guys trying to get a TV deal and maybe working something out, it does feel like WWE's a little bit on their heels, because we just laid out a few minutes ago, Jerry Lynn was originally supposed to be on One Night Stand. Vince McMahon gets cold feet, says no TNA talent here. So he's out. We also hear, and this is in the Observer, this is directly in the Observer, Scott D'Amore, after finding out that everyone they were interested in bringing in to TNA suddenly was on the list for Johnny Ace to sign immediately for WWE, joked that he, Scott D'Amore, would try and float names of some of his friends looking for work that he can't hire. A lot of the decision making when it comes to talent is being done by committee. Now, I don't know if he really did that or not, but it is interesting that right after this, Johnny Swinger, who was a longtime friend of Scott D'Amore's, gets signed to a WWE developmental deal. And that doesn't seem strange, except you realize he's like 30. And in that era, WWE just didn't do that. But at the same time, here's why I bring this up. There's conversation that WWE is interested in CM Punk, who at this point has been on TNA programming, Samoa Joe, who's been running Roughshod and Ring of Honor and is about to, we know, sign with TNA, and even Bryan Danielson. And it's written here in the Observer, Punk was offered a developmental deal where he would start in OVW. To the best of my knowledge, Joe was called by WWE, but they haven't discussed his situation with him yet. Not sure if they found Danielson yet, although John Laurinaitis was given the hurry up on him. Another free agent who asked not to be identified, but is known to be on the TNA want list, just got feelers this past week from WWE for the first time ever after years of non-interest. The coincidences in this business are amazing. So this is interesting because we know that Samoa Joe does wind up signing his TNA contract on June 14th. That's just, a couple of days after ECW One Night Stand. And that same afternoon that ECW presented One Night Stand, there was a matinee show where CM Punk, who was the Ring of Honor champion at the time, came out to the show in New York in a suit and signed his his WWE developmental contract using the Ring of Honor title to hold it up. I loved it. It was a great angle, a great storyline. But as wrestling fans at the time who had been keeping up with what was happening in Ring of Honor, and I was a big Ring of Honor fan, I thought it was interesting that you had Samoa Joe headed to TNA at the same time Punk was headed to OVW. And I think at the time, a lot of fans online felt like, well, Samoa Joe made the right move because he's immediately going to be programmed on pay-per-view. We just saw he signs on the 14th. 5 days later, he's wrestling Sanjay Dutt at the Slammiversary pay-per-view and getting a win. Meanwhile, Punk was just going to developmental. We know that's where he's going to forge a relationship with Paul Heyman, and well, he clearly did okay for himself in WWE. Do you remember ever having any sort of serious conversations about trying to lock down Punk to TNA? Was there a debate about Punk or Samoa Joe? Do you remember ever having serious conversations about Bryan Danielson here in 2005?
Neither serious conversation. We wanted Joe. I think I've told this story a couple of different times. I had a breakfast with Mick Foley, and he was very high on Joe. Others were high on Joe. A lot of folks were high on Joe. When I saw Joe for the first time, I damn sure was. And so we locked in on him. Again, when you're hiring talent, and we hired Joe without a TV deal, we were optimistic, but that's why just the timing of, man, maybe that's the thread here, Conrad. When you kind of look at a Jarrell Clark and Matt Bentley on the one hand, why didn't they, have a more fruitful career? Because while they were in, they were damn good at it. But, the timing of, shit, Conrad, have you heard me compliment any one single wrestler more than Bryan Danielson? I don't.
No.
I just hold him in the highest of regards. But, when they're up, quote unquote, for deals, Punk and we couldn't hire everybody, the Carters, and I get it, and I respect to this day just how tight the budgets were in our growing phases. Now, a little resentment when they doubled the budget when Hogan and them came in and miraculously had more purse strings, but that's a whole nother podcast. But the short answer is, Conrad, no, we never considered either guy, and look at them, both great talents. But Danielson in particular, his ability to tell stories is in a lot of ways unparalleled. And, damn, Conrad, the what if of that. Now, he would have succeeded in any promotion. He did succeed in any promotion. But, man, that's a fun avenue to walk down, to think about. Well, just think if we had gotten Danielson and Samoa Joe.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this. There was a rumor out there that, and I want to remind everybody, '04 is when Ring of Honor had their Feinstein controversy. And so, as a way to get people to stop talking about that and start talking about the great in-ring action, they had a trilogy of Samoa Joe CM Punk matches that were fantastic, including one that was like a match of the year type candidate. So it's written here in the Observer in an effort to get internet buzz on the show. And while that is better than nothing, I'm not sure what that really means. They wanted to book CM Punk versus Samoa Joe on Slammiversary, coming off the buzz from their match of the year high placing last year in Chicago. However, Punk turned it down because of his WWE offer. Joe was leaning towards turning it down, but is now scheduled to debut against Sanjay Dutt. Punk irked some people here in TNA by saying he wasn't going to come in and work with Joe because they weren't going to let him go 45 minutes. The reaction internally was, well, good luck in your 5-minute matches on Velocity. Amazing Red and Alex Shelley have both agreed to return, and they may be at the pay-per-view, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember this being true? Punk wanted to wrestle Samoa Joe, but said no thanks if I can't go 45 minutes. That doesn't seem real to me.
It doesn't, and like we could probably decipher it. We looked at like, all right, who's talking to the sheets to feed them that kind of narrative? None of it really adds up, and that's really worthless to go down that rabbit hole.
Is it Gabe?
But oh, you mean Gabe on their side? Very possible, but very, very, very possible. But I can't see, and I don't know if you said Joe or Punk or both wanted to go 45. I don't think anybody would think, oh yeah, come on, first night in, I'm gonna go for it. I just don't think that doesn't. None of that sounds anywhere close to saying.
Does it ring a bell that the provision in the Samoa Joe contract you guys signed with him is that they couldn't pull him from Ring of Honor and that he would be available to work New Japan tours? Did he have caveats in his first deal like that?
I'm pretty sure because the time we signed him, now I don't remember specifically what was written in, but I'm sure we were more than willing to bend and more or less put kind of a priority clause. We had to have priority, and maybe they had to give 90 or 120 days advance notice. Like, all right, if Japan wants him for a tour, yeah, let's make that happen for him. But hey, you got to give us advance notice. So maybe it's a 90-day notice, something to that effect.
One of the other things that is a major issue as we head to Slammiversary is you guys are going to part ways with Dusty Rhodes being an on-camera talent. Of course, you're still going to keep him involved behind the scenes, but he had been your director of authority. You're going to position that with Larry Zbyszko moving forward. Is that a conversation you have to have, and how much did that suck?
I don't see that. If anybody had that conversation, it would have been my old man. And I don't recall that happening. My gut tells me Dusty either came to that decision on his own or kind of a group decision that, hey, you're going to stay in creative, but your on-air character not happening.
There's other conversation, of course. We know that Matt Hardy is recently removed from WWE. He had a love triangle story that has been long covered. But now that he's available, there's, I guess, a request for, hey, let's get the Hardys in TNA. And neither actually make a written commitment to be there, and they're not actually there. But James Gibson is there. We know him as Jamie Noble. He recently had been released by WWE, and now he's got an opportunity to perhaps come do some TNA stuff. Why do you think, was there a change of heart where he felt like, hey, if I come to TNA, maybe WWE won't take me back? Or why didn't we get some James Gibson action in TNA?
During this time frame, I would venture to say, and that's why when I did read the research and thought it through, damn, we signed Joe during probably the toughest financial 90, 120, 180 days of the entire existence until long after I was gone. Like my gut tells me we were in a hiring freeze and then some during this time.
Of course, we know that on the pre-show, you were supposed to be out here cutting a promo, and you're mocking Raven and making all sort of bingo hall references. Sal Renaro is going to get involved, hit you with a guitar shot, or I'm sorry, you hit Sal with a guitar shot and you get arrested. So it's a fun angle. They're going to toss you out of the show. Raven slides into your spot, and that's how, even though he wasn't even supposed to be there, he winds up walking out the TNA champion. Do you like those sort of twists and turns like that?
Well, yes, I do. And Raven was the right guy. The angle we did, and I remember Sal was dressed up as a fan, and I wish we had a clip of that because he did a hell of a job. I feel like I saw Saul not long ago, which I did in an AEW event, but just kind of again, this was done for the pre-show audience. I guess you could say to try to create an impulse buy. I thought this was one of the more well-executed angles that we had done because you're taking, quote unquote, the King of the Mountain, my moniker, out of his match. Who's going to be inserted? What are they going to do? It was very chaotic. My old man kind of made a little cameo like, oh, what the hell's going on? They arrest me, throw me out of the building. TNA, brilliant job. It just kind of teed up like, all right, shit, I want to see how they get out of this. What are they going to do here? I thought it was one of the more well-executed pre-show angles. And when you go back to the Sunday Night Heat days prior to WWE pay-per-views during the Attitude Era, I just thought that was a hell of a concept. And I think there's so many different ways to help create interest and story and all kinds of stuff like that. Anyway, I thought it was a good angle.
Let's talk about the angle we started talking about on this show. It's, of course, about WGN. There's lots of discussion back and forth. There's even chatter about a TNT deal. We're going to talk about that in the coming weeks here on the program. We're not sure if we can get a full show out of it. Maybe we'll do it as a one-off, a special. If we do that, we're going to do it here on YouTube at myworldpod.com. That's myworldpod.com. I want to encourage you, go hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so you won't miss us the next time we're live. Like we're live right now. We got a handful of minutes here before we've got to bring today's episode to a close. Appreciate you guys being so patient with us and hanging out during Jeff's decision. He's sort of 50-50 on whether or not he should continue with the tin cans and string or if he should get internet. So we'll work on that and we'll pray for him.
Conrad, maybe there's an episode, the 10 greatest myths of TNA wrestling, fact or fiction. And I don't know, something along those lines, because the WGN story is kind of a crazy what if. But anyway, I think there's several of those in there.
Let's do that. We're going to work on that. We'll get that together in the coming weeks. The 10 biggest myths in TNA history coming your way. One of the biggest wishes is from Kurt Angle. He put a report out, or I guess it came out from Fightful last week, that Kurt Angle hopes that WWE actually purchases TNA and gets their entire library so more people can see his matches. It is crazy to think that Kurt Angle had more time and more matches in TNA than he did in WWE. Isn't that wild?
And look, the body of work, Abyss, Sting, AJ, Jay Lethal. I put my matches with him during that time frame. Because it was it was 3 different matches that we built over 6 months. Some of the very best of my career, but Kurt, man, I mean, I hate to just call him a workhorse or this or that, because he was, sorry, Lex, the total package. There was so many things that he did, not just good, but great. His Japan run when he went over and Yuji Nagata, and there's kind of story after story after story after story. Unfortunately, whether TNA owns the library or WWE owns the library, it just feels like these archives are just kind of all these libraries. Conrad, we can go back and talk about it. We used to think, oh man, this library and that library. Fact of the matter is, little highlights here and there. That's about it that people watch. Nobody's
watching it. I totally agree. I mean, we've learned that from the WWE Network. Hey, I do want to hit a couple of questions, but before we do, I wanted to ask you, because I know you've been down there quite a bit. I know you weren't this past weekend, but AAA presented Triple Mania this past weekend. And as you may recall, last month we saw Chad Gable beat Vikingo. I'm sorry, Vikingo beat Alberto Del Rio for the world title. I guess he's Alberto de Patron, whatever. But then we would see that because WWE wanted to have Vikingo and Chad Gable at the When Worlds Collide pay-per-view be a title match for the Mega Championship. I get it. I get the thinking. In the process of them announcing it, they announced it was a title match before Alberto had ever lost it. Now, we've already talked about that a few weeks ago on the podcast, but I'm bringing this up now because this past weekend, when Vikingo came to the ring, he is supposed to be the number one babyface in the promotion. He's supposed to be the babyface champion.
Technico.
But he got an incredibly sour response. The boos were raining down on him, and he did nothing wrong. He's done no heel behavior, nothing whatsoever. So I have a hard time buying the fact that the fans are actually booing Vikingo or expressing their displeasure with his performance or his attitude or his promos. It does feel more like they don't like the creative. They don't like the WWE seemingly taking control because, and maybe I'm reading into it. How do you read Vikingo, a babyface, coming out to a chorus of boos really for the first time?
The backstage segment, this was sent to me, but just seeing him backstage got some boos. So it wasn't necessary. Anyway, Conrad, the first thing I'll say is this is show 2. So don't project. Don't get too far ahead of the story. Don't read anything into it any more than show 2. With that being said, there are some signs that the old Toby Keith lesson that he gave Jarrett back June 19th, 2002, know your audience and earn them one fan at a time, never rings truer to me when you kind of see that in that. The fan base is letting you know. Now, Monterey, Conrad, that's another thing. You got to know the market. Monterey is different than Mexico City. It is a different market. It's viewed a little bit different. So you got to take that into consideration. But with all that being said, the AAA fan base voiced their displeasure with something. I put it upon the shoulders within WWE to figure that out. And I would suggest figure it out sooner rather than later, because Alberto, super top talent, everything that goes with it, are they cheering him? Are they booing Vikingo? Or does it have to do with the brand? Are the people voicing their displeasure with the brand? Time will tell, pal. Time will tell.
What's your gut tell you? Say it out loud.
Dorian should embrace the role of really what happened.
Let his on-screen character take the heat.
Buddy, the fact of the matter is the Roldan family sold out to the American conglomerate.
Why not lean into it?
I mean, 1,000%, and roll with it.
Can you imagine if they made him, what was the Chavo? Kerwin White. If they just really leaned with it, man, that would get some monster.
I don't know about that, but I just think it's going to be interesting. I think the opportunities right now, and that's why I just think I'm excited for CMLL, AEW partner. I think there is a tremendous, I think Mexico, in a lot of ways, the entire eyes of the wrestling world, they're going to certainly be there Wednesday night in a big way, but I just think the opportunities abound for Mexican wrestling right now.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see what's coming next. This is Wrestling Film is with us here live and says, spending our days hard on the go. Hope you legends are well. If Jeff was to create a figure 4 blister action figure pack of his favorite opponents ever, who would he pick? So it's going to be a 4-pack, or I guess a 5-pack. We'll say that it's you on one side and then your favorite 4 opponents. We know Shawn Michaels is in there. We know Kurt Angle's in there. Who are the other 2 spots?
Oh boy, it's hard to say. If we're going to go old school, if we want to get, Lawler, Kurt, Shawn, Lawler. So they got to be opponent. AJ.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Devin Dowling says, ask Double J, you had BG James, Kip James, and Sean Waltman on this card. Was there any thought in bringing in China during this era? We know she would eventually be brought in 2011.
No, not to my knowledge. No, that didn't factor in. And again, I'm going to go, the overriding arc is the back end, the business set of circumstances, but no, we didn't give it any thought.
When you're saying business set of circumstances, let me say it plainer. Didn't think you could afford her, couldn't make the economics work.
That's 1A and 1B creatively.
You didn't have anybody for her to work.
No, there you go. Said best right there.
Well, I mean, listen, if this was WCW and you were Hulk Hogan, we'd book her, bring her in for a one-off on a pay-per-view, and you beat her ass, get your win back.
That's what I'm talking about. You were talking about Laurinaitis a second ago. Wasn't this during the time frame when they hired
the wrong one-legged wrestler?
Yes.
Well, I mean, this is after that because Zach Gowen's on this show, but yes.
But I thought it was in response.
Yeah, he did. Yes, Zach Gowen did eventually go. It's a fun story that Zach Gowen wrestled in TNA, in WWE, and most recently in AEW. Let that be a lesson to you dreamers out there. Who would have thought once upon a time that legitimately a young man with one leg would wrestle for TNA, WWE, and AEW? That feels make believe, but it happened.
I love Zach. I mean, his story and his road in recovery and everything that goes into it. He is a winner in life, my friends, in more ways than one.
Jack Gaffney says, Jeff, you're running the show and you're the top heel. How stressful was that? And when did you think, maybe I don't need to be in the main event on this one?
I can't tell you, Jack. Maybe I don't need to be in the main event on this one. When we signed Kurt Angle, you can look at the story. I was out the door. When I think back and think of all the hats that I wore every day I went to work from 2002 till 2007, 5 years, it was, I'll never ever, I don't regret it. I'll never change anything about it. Well, yeah, I would, but just the amount of hats that I wore, trying to do everything I could to build that company. Talk about sweat equity, but yeah, Jack, when it was time for me to step away, that de-escalated my stress.
Alex wants to know, in your opinion, Jeff, had Booker and Buff Bagwell had a 5-star classic on Monday Night Raw from Tacoma, would it have completely changed the course of WWE history?
Well, when you say 5-star classic, you're talking about a Meltzer rating. So I'm not saying that Vince would have been enamored. I think he wasn't enamored with what we call a 5-star. But if you're saying, if the audience, again, you kind of look at the Vikingo, Alberto crowd response. I think Booker and Buff, no matter who is in that match and how good they performed, I'm not sure that would have changed any course of history. I think the creative is much to blame as Booker and Buff.
Well, nobody to blame next week but ourselves. If you don't join us, we're talking about Slammiversary from 2010. It was actually Slammiversary 8, and it was a who's who on this card. Kurt Angle and Kazarian, Douglas Williams and Brian Kendrick for the X title. Madison Rayne and Roxy, title versus career for the Women's Knockout Championship. Jesse Neal versus Brother Ray. Matt Morgan versus Hernandez. Abyss versus Desmond Wolfe. We know him as Nigel McGuinness, and Chelsea is going to be there. We've also got Jay Lethal working with AJ Styles, who has Ric Flair in his corner. Jeff Hardy is teaming with Mr. Anderson to take on Beer Money. And in the main event, it's Rob Van Dam defending his world title against Sting. And this all went down on June 13th, 2010. That's our topic next week on the program. In the coming weeks, we're going to be doing Ask Jeff Anything. We will eventually, I promise, get to Gail Kim. And we do have an opportunity to talk about the WGN hypotheticals, and maybe we'll do that as part of the biggest myths in TNA history series. In the meantime, I want to mention that if you're struggling with your credit cards, man, I can help at savewithconrad.com. A recent survey from Experian found that 2 in 5 Americans in credit card debt feel like making the minimum payment is enough to manage it. Well, if you're struggling and you feel stuck making minimum payments, let me tell you the answer. It's been hiding in your house this whole time. It's not in the basement. It's not in the attic. It's not in your kitchen in the old junk drawer. No, it's in the equity in your house. Don't take my word for it. Just ask my man, Andy. He's up in Appleton, Wisconsin. We were showing him how to get rid of all of his credit card debt that he had racked up after some family medical issues. Well, SaveWithConrad.com hooked him up. We showed him how to consolidate all that debt and save more than $1,000 a month. You hear me? Andy's saving $1,000 a month because he spent a few minutes with us at SaveWithConrad.com. But how much can you save? It's free to find out right now. I recently had a heart-to-heart with one of our listeners to the podcast who said, hey, I probably should have called a long time ago. And I asked, well, why didn't you? They said, well, I felt ashamed that I'd fallen behind and I'd racked up some credit card debt and I knew I shouldn't have done it. And I just didn't want you to know. Dude, come on. I do this for a living. I've been doing it since 2001. Like, I want to help you save money. I want to be your mortgage advisor for life. That's why it's SaveWithConrad.com. We don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. Let us run the numbers. What if we can hook you up like we did Andy? My man saved $1,000 a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free. It's no cost, no obligation. And hey, if we can't save you money, we won't waste your time. But we also offer you the year 3 guarantee. You see, experts seem to agree that interest rates are going to fall in the next couple of years. But when they do, we want you to be able to take advantage of that and get a much lower rate and a much cheaper monthly payment. But we don't want you to waste money on a second set of closing costs. So we give it to you in writing. You got a 3-year guarantee from us. You're going to start saving money right now, including a little summer vacation from house payments. That's right. No payments in July or August. You're done until September 1st. And come September 1st, you're going to be saving cash. Andy's saving $1,000 a month. Find out how much money you can save right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com. And when rates improve over the next 3 years, we'll refinance you again without charging you a new set of lender fees. You get the peace of mind of knowing you got the best deal for your family right now, but you're not going to waste money later. That's all at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129. Equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com. Jeff, I never know what to expect when we sit down and click record, but I had a blast day today, man, just talking about hypotheticals, learning about what you think about Rikishi commenting on Jay and the hypothetical new investors and the hypothetical WGN. And I think the narrative from today is timing's everything. And I had a good time with you today. So thanks for all the time. And I hope that everybody has a chance to catch AEW in Arena, Mexico tomorrow night.
Passion, persistence, and perseverance. The 3 Ps. I enjoyed it today too. And I'm going to make a statement here for my YouTube folks out there, from Conrad and old Curb Stomping, Waffle Stomping Silva. We're fixing this internet, folks. I am fed up with it. I'm pulling the strap down. I got the guitar out. Connie, book it tomorrow. I need an IT guy. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Ian, Coach Rosie, Alex, Amanda, Darren, Instagram Wrestling, Steve. Anyway, guys, thanks. Had a blast. This is fun.
Hit the subscribe button. We'll be back next week, and we'll be doing it live at myworldpod.com.
Peace.